So welcome to the lecture on veteran students for CEPD 6178. In this lecture, we're going to talk about veteran students' college experience, identify needs for support for veteran students, and then also we're going to be able to define what exactly a veteran student is. So that's how we're going to begin. The definition of a veteran student centers around active duty, which essentially means they played a direct role in the operational work in the armed forces as opposed to doing some sort of administrative work. Now, a veteran student can be a student who served in the military in active duty for a day or up to 30, 40, 50 years. The time doesn't matter. All that matters is that they played in the operational work and as opposed to just doing administrative work. And they had to have been discharged honorably. That is a big thing. If there's a dishonorable discharge, then they don't qualify as a veteran student. They don't qualify for veteran benefits. And all these definitions is coming from the Department of Education. Now, one big thing about veteran students is that there are different types. There's a combat veteran student, and that is one that's faced combat overseas or has experienced an operational role in a war zone. There are those that are currently active duty, but if they're currently active duty, then they're technically not veteran students because veteran students or veterans have been discharged from the Army. And then you have reservists in the National Reserves, Air Reserves, Army Reserves. They too have military experience, and if they have been activated or have played an operational role, then they qualify for veteran students. But if they've never had an active duty role, then they don't qualify for veteran student status. Now, institutions may classify them as veteran students, but in terms of the Department of Education and VA benefits, they wouldn't qualify. So, one other interesting fact about veteran students is that military academies, their graduates will always constitute a veteran student, with the exception of being dishonorably discharged. So military academies, they can be a veteran without ever having some sort of operational work. So that is one exception to the definition. So when we talk about veteran students, it's very unique because we're talking about veterans and their experiences and all the inputs that they're bringing in with them, their background and their personal experience, and being a student. So we're actually taking two distinct populations and merging them into one. And we're going to talk about how that merger can really transform the student experience for veteran students. So when we talk about inputs, these are the characteristics that a student is bringing into college with them. All right, it is personal characteristics. All right, so what does this look like for student veterans? Well, first of all, is their service. All right, when they leave the military service, more often than not, they're coming disciplined, they are focused, they have a sense of commitment, and all of this stems from the military culture and training. All of that training creates a type of input. They're generally full-time employed students, and they're non-traditional age, so they're usually older than 24, but that may not always be the case. They tend to have families, tend to be married. They also have been, now recently they may have been deployed overseas into the Middle East or have been engaged in combat of some sort, which can add some other factors such as mental health, PTSD, anxiety, depression. We're going to talk about that in a second. But who are veteran students generally? Well, generally speaking, they are white married men. Now again, this is just a general analysis. One study had the veteran students listed as 85% white and 11% African American, and then the rest fell in under that. Other studies had a little bit lower, a little bit higher. So on average, they tend to be white married men. And all of these different factors here are going to play some sort of role in their learning outcomes in college. They may get more out of college, they may get less out of college. More because of the discipline, focus, and commitment, less because of some mental health concerns or being full-time students or having a full-time family. So these are important things that we need to think about when we're working with veteran students and identifying that population. So what are some of the challenges these students face? Well, first of all, the most obvious are psychological challenges. And the most well known is probably PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, where soldiers in combat come back um, having a lot of issues or problems either readjusting or coping with the things that they've experienced during combat. This is a very, very serious disorder, and it's often misdiagnosed or underdiagnosed because of the stigma that comes with PTSD. So a lot of times veteran students won't want to seek out help, especially if they're feeling depressed or they have anxiety or experiencing other types of mental health disorders. And then you add on the fact that they may be more likely to be males, um, and be a man, and all of those different types of gender issues that come along with it. The psychological challenges that veteran students face tend to be greater than non-veteran students because of those stigmas and identity challenges. The other piece is engagement. Veteran students may have a harder time relating to non-veteran students. And think about this for a second, and this relates to the culture shift. Veteran students come from a military culture, one that is disciplined, focused, institutionalized. They know exactly what they need to do, how they need to do it. They are committed. They go full steam ahead. They are in college for academics. They are there to better their lives. Now, they're surrounded by traditional age college students, 18 to 24, that are there, maybe not necessarily for the academics, but there for the social life. So the shift from the military culture to the campus culture can be a shock. But there's never really a shift, because once you're in the military and you have become assimilated into military culture, you never really leave that military culture. So you're essentially combining two cultures into one. So imagine having your own personal culture, and that is very distinct in the way you act, in the way you are, and adding that into a campus culture that is very different. It's very similar to racial or ethnicity cultures and being forced to assimilate into a certain way. It's a very similar concept here, except for it's more inward than it is outward, if that makes sense. So what does this mean when we apply Tinto's to it, Tinto's model? Because we've already talked about Aston's model in terms of the inputs that they're bringing. The campus culture and their environment is going to affect their learning outcomes, what they get out of college. All right, so that's the IEO model. Now, when we talk about Tinto's model, here this is going to be very different, because for veteran students, we have the family background and we have skills and attributes. These two things are going to be very different than non-veteran students. All right, so these are going to have a much bigger impact on the academic and the social system. Now, if we think about veteran students and the VA benefits and where they are in their life, they're there for academics. They're not there for a social system, because their family background now is likely to be married, they're likely to have children, they have very different skills and attributes, and they're in college for very different reasons. So the external forces that they're facing in college is very different than non-traditional students. So for them, the academic system is going to be much larger, they're going to feel much more connected, and then that's going to relate back to their persistence decision. So what can we as campus administrators do in the environment that really facilitates this type of movement? One of the first things we can do is to create centers of support for students, and this is where they can go to receive specific information that's relevant to them, help them with academic advising, GI benefits, veteran medical issues, whatever it can be in terms of their specific benefit, counseling services that focus specifically on veteran students, or PTSD, depression, anxiety that specifically affects veteran students. These types of support can help connect them to the social and academic systems, and also help connect them to campus and help them adjust with the campus culture, which can then help them persist. Another piece can be extracurricular activities and helping them connect with students with whom they can relate. So veteran students organizations is one really good example of how veteran students can relate to other veteran students as opposed to getting involved in Greek life because they're just at a different point in their life. So having those student organizations where these students are able to connect if they want to um, is going to be very, very critical. And then the other piece is educating faculty and staff on this population so that they can have a better understanding and consider them when developing syllabi, creating assignments, talking with students, or engaging with students that may be having difficulty in their class. These are just three little things that can be done. The hardest thing that we can really think about doing is changing campus culture in terms of creating a culture that is encouraging and supportive to environment students or to veteran students. And a large part of that is our role as student affairs professionals.